Hello, welcome back to Whatever We Want, which is sort of the name we've landed on with this.
Yeah, it's sort of nebulous.
So at work,
Jam that we
at
do.
my store, at my video game retail job, they're selling this little handy little box of Geek Pop table topics, questions to start great conversations. So I bought this for exactly $1, and Sam is gonna interview me with some dorky ass questions.
Yeah, and then you'll switch it around and interview me and
Exactly.
ask me dorky ass questions. Okay. I'm gonna keep them out just in case there's like a really good one that we want to revisit for later.
Sure.
But let's jump right in.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a good one. What was the first comic book that you read?
The first comic book I ever read? Oh my
Yeah.
god.
Yeah.
That's going back way far.
Yeah.
The first comic book that I remember reading, the very, very first one,
Yeah.
first one ever, I think was actually a Sonic comic. A Sonic the Hedgehog comic,
very
yeah.
timely because the Sonic movie, by the time this comes out, is out in theaters right now.
Yeah, and you can go watch it.
You can check it out.
We're not sponsored.
I'm not sponsored at all.
I wish we were.
But I do think you should go see the Sonic movie.
I'm definitely going to go see it. But yeah, it was a Sonic comic. It was back when Archie, the comic pump company,
Okay.
owned the license to Sonic Comics. And they were releasing really great comics, actually. Those comics
Yeah.
had a great story.
Yeah.
But there's that one, but the one that got me into Marvel comics was a Deadpool comic and an Iron Man comic that someone bought me for my 10th grade birthday, whatever age you are in the 10th grade.
I didn't know you started off with Deadpool.
Mm-hmm.
That's
It
really
was one of the
cool.
first comics I ever read, yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Very, very stylish of you.
Well, it's funny, right? Because at the time, Deadpool wasn't very Deadpool is huge now, right? He's
Yeah.
super popular. But back
Yeah.
then, he was still
Not
popular, but it wasn't like Ryan Reynolds. Everyone knows who Deadpool is.
Exactly.
Popular.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think my first comics were the Archie comics.
I think everyone's first comic book, especially
Intro.
us growing up, is going to be the Archie comics for sure.
Yeah, my mom's best friend's kids had a bunch of old Archie's digests that they weren't reading anymore, and they used to give them to me by the trunkful.
You may
I
as
have
well.
so many old Archie's digests floating around.
What's the next question?
Have you ever gone to a Renaissance festival?
No.
Like a Ren fair? That's pretty straightforward.
That was
I'd love
easy.
to go though. Get me one of them big ass turkey legs.
Yeah, that'd be good. Yeah.
Oh my
I mean,
God.
does medieval times count?
No. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some really good combat choreography that goes on at medieval times.
Sure.
Like
it's a whole ass show.
It's not a fucking Ren
If
fair.
I was do you think medieval times is the Hollywood for stage combat people? Do you think that
Yeah.
getting there is
Yeah.
yes, I've made it?
Or I feel like medieval times is the soap opera of
Oh yeah.
getting a soap opera.
It's like the
of
days in our
combat,
lives of stage combat.
where it's it's not boundary breaking acting that
No.
you're doing, but it's a steady paycheck, and you cannot you can't poo poo anyone for wanting that.
Definitely not.
It's a steady job. So next question. Which Disney villain are you most afraid of?
Most afraid of?
I can answer this.
Well, I was about to say you with the witch and Snow White.
Yeah.
Disney villain I'm most afraid of. I was never really afraid of Disney villains growing up.
That's such bullshit. I hate that you said that.
I think I'm blanking on Disney villains. I guess okay. How about this? Instead of I won't answer it me growing up. I'll say the Disney villain that I am definitely the most afraid of is the bad guy from The Hunchback of Notre Dame.
Oh, not what do I want to say? Gollum.
Gollum.
It's got two L's in it. It's
something like that.
Errol or
He's
something.
probably one of the most evil Disney villains, and generally speaking.
I would argue that Maleficent is probably the most evil Disney villain.
Well, Maleficent is the coolest Disney villain in my opinion.
I'd say she's the most evil because her raison d'être, the main reason why she's a villain is because she didn't get invited to a baby shower.
Yeah, she's super pissed
and then
about
she
it.
turned super evil and
Right.
cursed an infant.
Okay, let me reword that then.
Because she didn't get invited to a baby shower.
What a fucking baby. Who's the real baby here, Maleficent? I'll reword that then. Maleficent may be the most evil, but I think the bad guy from Hunchback of Notre Dame is the most sinister.
Yeah.
And I think being sinister is scarier than
It's
being
also
evil.
really complex because he wants to fuck Esmeralda.
It's really it's a great movie though.
Yeah.
All right, what's the next question?
Zombies or vampires, Cam? I know you hate this question. That's why when I saw it, I was like,
did you
I
set
gotta
me up?
ask him. I gotta ask him.
Zombies or vampires? Well, I'm really tired of zombie media, as with everyone.
Yeah.
Because from like 2012 to 2016, it was like zombies all over the place. I actually think vampires are really interesting, but I don't mean, and it's gonna sound very stereotypical of me to say this, like, oh, of course the angry white guy doesn't like Twilight, but like, I don't mean Twilight vampires. I mean like Dracula, Count Vlad, like old school vampires, like D&D vampires. Like there's a very interesting lore when it comes to vampires and the way they conduct their society.
Right.
And I also like Twilight touched on this a little bit, and this is part, like, I'll give them credit for this, is, but like vampires are like crazy strong and super durable and like superhuman.
Absolutely.
But they never play that up in vampire media.
No.
So I think
pretty.
I think that
and eternal.
Yeah. And like there's like in The Witcher, vampires they can look human, but they're actually these like massive, large, bipedal bat monsters. And I think that's really interesting.
Very interesting.
So as a mythical creature and an interesting enemy to throw at, vampires are more interesting than zombies. So I would say vampires.
Okay, this is kind of you. Do you own any replica weapons from fantasy novels?
I do own a master sword.
Yes, I've seen that.
That's just about it. I don't think I have any other replica weapons. Because the thing is, like,
I was gonna say, because you have weapons, but you don't have like replica weapons.
As cool as it would be to own stuff like that, I don't have the room for it.
Yeah.
Like, what I want to do with that master sword,
like,
and like, it's a little banged up. I might have to get it, like, fixed up a little bit, but I want to like mount it in a room one day, like when I have a house or something, and like a space that's mine. Like I want to get my memorabilia on the walls and shelves and shit.
Yeah. Put it up nice.
But until then, there's no point in me collecting the shit.
Yeah.
What am I gonna do with fucking Longtooth, or the fuck Jon Snow's sword is called, if I buy it from Green Earth or whatever, you know?
This is my sword, Snaggletooth.
It's the cold one. I'll tell you one though, she's not my queen.
I don't want it.
I don't want it.
I don't want it.
What's the next question?
Do you think supervillains can be redeemed? This is very broad.
I mean, depends.
Yeah, sure, I guess.
That's my answer. It depends.
I guess. Like, I feel like had they not killed him, like Killmonger could have been redeemed.
Well, Killmonger needed some therapy and a hug.
Yeah,
like that's all he really needed.
I don't know. I just feel like he needed to be like, "Hey, auntie," and then like Angela Bassett just needed to be like, "Nephew." And, like, give him some food.
But like Thanos, like no.
Fuck Thanos.
He killed half the universe.
Yeah.
So how the fuck?
He's also just beyond, like, he's completely bought and sold on his whole like 50% massacre idea.
He's almighty in his eyes.
Otherwise.
He's a god. He believes that he's a god. Mm-hmm. So I think you're way past the threshold there.
Yeah, you just gotta get rid of him.
What's the next question? Oh, you didn't like that one?
I'm not doing this.
What can I see the ones you don't like?
Yeah. Have you been to an arcade?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
What's wrong with these questions? iPhone, Android, Batman or Superman,
I'm not asking
PC
you
or Mac?
iPhone or Android. That's so contrived.
I guess so. Batman or Superman would have been interesting.
Okay, well, Batman or Superman?
I actually think Superman is more interesting than Batman.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, because I find Superman to be kind of boring because he can just do everything.
Well, that's the thing, is that, in my opinion, I'm not trying to like shit on you when I say this, but a lot of people's knee-jerk reaction when it comes to Superman is just to write him off because he's like a Boy Scout and he's super powerful. But you ever thought about how different our world would be if Superman was real? Because there wouldn't be this response. Not everybody would love Superman. I would actually argue that more than half of the Earth would be terrified of Superman if he was real.
It's really scary.
And that's how you have to write him. Yeah. Like a great example of writing a Superman-like character, and I'll shout this out every time I can, is The Boys on Netflix. Okay. Or excuse me, Amazon Prime.
Okay.
It's a Prime original show about a graphic novel adaptation of a thing, and the idea is that like superheroes are run by this corporate organization, which then like so on, it's like imagine capitalism and superheroes.
Yeah.
It's a really interesting take on the genre, and the Superman character in that, his name is Homelander, and it's amazing what can happen when you build up this guy to be this perfect thing when he himself can't acknowledge his own flaws. It's very interesting. I think it's really easy to write Superman just like as he is, like, oh, he's like Goku sort of. You know, like that's a lot of people just write Superman. He like, he crashes through walls and he saves the day. But no, Superman becomes interesting when you think about him and his effect on the world and like how politics would react to it. Someone like Superman, like Superman Red Sun is one of the best comic books I've ever read. Like I love that one.
Right, when Superman becomes a communist.
Yeah, he like lands in Russia as opposed to the
Instead of
United
America.
States and becomes like the czar of Russia because Russia, at least in this reality, appreciates things like power more than the States would and like would see the value in someone like Superman being the leader of their country.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Whereas Batman is like, in my opinion, Batman is only as interesting as his villains.
Yeah.
And if he's not paired up with an interesting villain, then it's not an interesting story.
Interesting. I'm just a little, especially since sorry, we've been recording like all afternoon, and I have like a throat thing, and all the talking is like drying it out. I'm gonna keep going. As with the conversations around mental health slowly becoming more nuanced, emphasis on slowly, I feel like Batman is a little played out. And when in this day and age, when it comes to the question of like Batman or Superman, it's like I almost want to do like Superman and like literally any other DC character.
Just anyone at this point.
Don't like, because Batman I find is like so connected to mental illness, but it's like it's
not a healthy depiction of mental illness, I would say.
Yeah, it's
cartoonish mental illness.
Yeah, it's sort of a caricature of itself.
Yeah.
Because like, you know, like the Joker represents like X mental illness, and
right.
then, like the Penguin is like this mental illness.
Well, that's actually why people liked the movie so much, Joker, because it took the mental illnesses that Joker represents and made it a more realistic depiction.
Yeah.
And like, you know what? To the movie's credit, it did a better job than some Batman media has done in the past. So. Yeah, but that's why I would pick Superman. I would in that Batman versus Superman.
It's interesting. I was having this conversation with my friend Conrad last night, and we were talking because I saw Birds of Prey recently, and
you said it was good too.
I enjoyed it. Yeah, it was good. And he was like, "What DC just like can't grasp is that like I almost feel like you have to go into the vault." You know, Marvel, think about everybody in the MCU. Almost all of them are like deep dives into the vault.
Yeah.
They dove deep for Iron Man. They dug out Iron Man. They dug out Guardians.
Yep.
They dug out Black Panther, to be perfectly honest.
He wasn't very popular.
And they dug out these characters and gave them their own intro movies and then threw them all together.
Yeah.
Because I was talking about how in Birds of Prey, it feels like the members of the Birds of Prey just don't really like, I don't feel like I know them very well. And like in like the one of them, Black Canary, like she uses her powers like twice, and one of them is like in a very, very like minute way. She just like breaks the glass with her voice, you know, and you're like, oh, okay, so she's got a voice that can like do stuff.
Right, yeah, sonic voice or whatever.
Yeah. So like why doesn't DC ever like why is DC sticking to like Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Green Lantern? Like,
I mean, I actually think I could, in my opinion, the reason why DC is doing what they're doing is because they shot themselves in the foot with the first 10 movies they tried to make. It's like, okay, so Marvel took their time, took a fucking decade to build this universe, and now they have it and they can do whatever they want with it. They took the time and the effort to make it. DC was like, oh, let's just do all that in 3 movies. In a year. And obviously, they were banking on the fact because like.
But it's like now I'm tired. I'm tired of Superman. I'm tired of Batman.
Because they shot themselves in the foot.
I mean, like I was already tired. Wonder Woman's not my favorite superhero to begin with.
Well, yeah,
so
she's just female Superman.
I mean,
like
I was
all she is really.
I was stoked to support a female-led superhero movie.
Yeah.
But and I appreciate
that movie's
it for all
pretty
that
good.
It achieved in that regard. But like as far as like actual superheroes go, like I don't want to see Wonder Woman. I want to see like what's purple Teen Titan? Raven, yeah. Yeah, I want to see like
that'd be interesting.
You know.
Well, here's the thing, right, Sam? So the difference between, and we'll move on to the next question after this. So it'll probably be our last question. The difference between DC and Marvel is that Marvel superheroes are people that become super.
Yeah.
Whereas DC superheroes are almost like Greek gods.
Born, yeah.
Like they're like pantheon. Like the Justice League is like a pantheon.
Yeah.
So they're less relatable, in my opinion.
I guess.
From a standpoint. because like the whole appeal
I
was
could get into that.
the whole appeal of Spider-Man is it's an interesting storytelling narrative, but I think
Yeah.
as like relating to characters.
I mean, like, we love mythology, right? And,
Yeah,
like,
but
we
so
can't
like
relate
I'm trying to
Zeus.
say is that characters like Spider-Man are far more relatable because it's like your average Joe who becomes a superhero.
Yeah, friendly neighborhood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas like how can anyone relate to Superman?
Right.
Because he's impossible to relate to. But the thing is, I do think that's interesting from a narrative perspective. You can write around something like that. But from a movie perspective, where like DC wanted everyone just to love their heroes,
Yeah.
they fucked it up.
Well, I could see where, like, I see where you're coming from. My only thing is that, like, there are human aspects to these characters. You know, like Clark Kent loves Martha and what's Daddy
Ken,
Kent?
I think Ken,
Kent.
maybe, I don't know.
Yikes.
Ben, I don't fucking know.
Ben Kent, Uncle Ben Kent.
He's dead. He's alive for like 3 seconds, and then in all of the media surrounding
Anyways,
Superman.
like Superman has like the Kents who have like taken him in, and then like
And Lois
Batman.
Lane.
I mean, Batman is human, right? He has Alfred and
Mm-hmm.
anybody else, maybe from like the government, whoever Morgan Freeman's character is
Yeah.
in like Christopher Nolan's
Lucius.
Batman. Lucius, thank you. Goddamn, Wonder Woman has Chris Pine's character. Whoever he was, like
Right.
these like super gods like come down to earth and then connect with humans,
Mhm.
and they don't expect it, and it complicates things.
Yeah.
Is what I appreciate. So like, go off that.
Yeah, I mean
You
that's
know?
yeah. They could have done a better job with that for sure.
Yeah. I just feel like, I don't know, like there's always something. Like DC movies are fine. Like I don't hate them as much as I play it up to be, but that's just it. Like there's always something missing.
My only
There's,
problem
like,
with DC movies, and this I'm not talking about the newer ones because I've heard Shazam is great. I've heard Birds of Prey was great.
Cool.
The ones like Justice League and Suicide Squad, which was
Yeah.
like, but those are like bad films. Like they're poorly made.
Yeah.
They're hack jobs.
Yeah, I
Like,
didn't appreciate Suicide
They were
Squad.
they were slapped together in the editing process because they were like, well, we got all this film and no story, so. I mean, it's funny,
so
right?
here's like a 5-second clip of Harley Quinn riding down an elevator,
For
an all clear elevator.
Oh, look at her butt. What's funny, right? Before we move on to the little final question, it's interesting to say the reaction to Birds of Prey has been lukewarm because they said it was an abysmal box office, but it made almost the same amount of money its first weekend that Ford vs Ferrari did, and they have this, comparable budgets. So it actually made a pretty good return, and I think that people just don't like women.
No, that's totally part of it.
But it's funny, but someone on Reddit pointed out, it's like, it was a snarky comment, but it was like, oh, wow, the follow-up to the universally hated Suicide Squad didn't do well? Who would have thought that
would've
people
thought?
wouldn't go see the sequel to Suicide Squad? Like, but he makes a point, though.
Yeah.
Like, of course, like, I think what DC is doing now, from what I can tell, they're still doing, like, the loose connection with their movies.
Yeah.
But it is more or less standalone films at this point.
The Joker is like present in Birds of Prey.
Is he in the movie?
He's not in it, but because he and Harley have like just broken up
Right.
in Birds of Prey.
So they talk
like,
about him and shit.
Yeah, so they talk about him, and like there's a scene where like they go back to one of Harley's old haunts where she and Joker kept a bunch of weapons. And on the wall, like there's like the Joker's like ha-has like written all over the walls.
So
and stuff
his
like
presence
that.
is felt.
His presence is very much felt.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
But what's our final question?
Which superhero do you aspire to be like?
Well, that's interesting. I had to think about that.
I always feel like people want to say Captain America because he is just so morally sound.
Because he's virtuous and
Yeah.
a good role model.
He is literally a good role model. That's why they call him Captain America, because Americans are supposed to model themselves
Yeah.
after him.
I mean, and there's a lot of narratives surrounding Captain America, how he has to admit that America isn't what it used to be.
Yeah.
And it's interesting.
Yeah.
God, I don't know where I aspire to be.
There's also just a lot of superheroes.
Tons of fucking
Like
superheroes.
I could just miss them.
I aspire to be like Black Bolt, so I can just shut up forever.
Who?
Do you know who Black Bolt is?
No.
He's the leader of the Inhumans.
Oh. Okay.
But the whole idea so the Inhumans are like sort of like mutants.
Yeah.
But their leader, Black Bolt, is married to Medusa, who his whole
Like
thing.
Greek mythology Medusa.
Well, it's like the Inhuman spin on
Okay.
Medusa. They might even just share a name. I don't know a lot about the Inhumans. I only have a couple of their books. But Black Bolt's whole thing is that he has like a sonic boom voice, and he speaks in whispers, like to the point where like no one can understand him because
Yeah.
if he speaks any louder than that, he'll kill someone. But there's one of my favorite comic book moments of all time, where in the original Infinity War, in the comic book Infinity War, Thanos comes down to the Inhumans like place on Earth, and he's looking for something, maybe like an Infinity Stone. I don't remember what he's looking for, but the whole thing is that they've lured Thanos to that city and evacuated the city, and when he gets down there, it's just Black Bolt, and he's like, "Oh, it's you! Like, what's going on?" Like, and they have like a little fight.
Yeah.
And Thanos like threatens to kill everyone, and Black Bolt screams like no,
Yeah.
and levels the city.
Wow.
But the idea was that they was trying to kill Thanos, like they were
Yeah.
baiting him there,
Yeah.
so he could do specifically that.
Yeah.
And it's such a sick moment.
Black Bolt just like shouts.
Yeah.
My thing is that like he could literally say anything in that moment and just like
Yeah.
flatten Thanos.
He'd
Right
be,
then and there.
he'd be like, cherry pie.
Yeah. Nuggets.
I love you. But no, superheroes I aspire to be. I guess I would be like Captain America is an easy answer.
Yeah.
And I think that is not a bad answer. I just think it's easy.
Yeah.
I would say something like, I don't know, like Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Someone who's well liked and tries his best.
That's a good one.
Because Spider-Man isn't perfect. Spider-Man fucks up.
Yeah.
He makes mistakes.
Spider-Man can be irrational sometimes.
He can be irrational. He can be human.
There's room for.
But at the end of the day, he's always trying to do his best.
Yeah.
And that's all I can ever try to do is my best.
Yeah. Yeah. I like the idea of Ms. Marvel.
Yeah.
I've been seeing snippets. I follow this Tumblr.
Like the
called,
Camilla Khan Miss Marvel you're
Yeah.
talking about? Yeah.
Yeah. I follow this Tumblr account called Superheroes in Color that
Dope.
highlights non-white folks in specifically like print media, I would say, because it's not just comic books. It's like novels and film and just print media, stuff like that. And they post Ms. Marvel panels every now and again. So I haven't read anything except for New Normal. I read New Normal back in university for
That's
a
her
comic
origin,
book
isn't it?
course. Yeah, that's her origin.
It's a great graphic novel.
But I've read stuff since then, and I don't know. I kind of vibe with Ms. Marvel.
Ms. Marvel's dope.
Yeah.
She's gonna be in Square Enix's Avengers game.
Yeah.
As one of the main characters.
Yeah.
To play as.
Yeah, and I just this is aging myself down by a lot because I'm nowhere near close to Kamala Khan's age.
No, she's like 15.
She's a straight up teenager. But struggling in a space where not a lot of people look like you, and like being a young person and like asserting yourself and your power, while also coming of age is like
Trying to understand your new body and your power
yeah,
and growing up.
Yeah. It's interesting to me.
She's a part of the Champions, I think, is what that team is called.
I think so.
It's
yeah.
a team of her.
I think she's the leader.
I don't know if she's the leader. I think Nova's the leader.
Okay.
But it's her, Miles Morales,
I want her to
Nova,
be the leader.
the new Hulk, and Vision's daughter. I believe it's the 5 of them.
Cool.
The Champions, yeah.
I should get into that.
They're pretty cool.
I got paid today. Maybe I'll just buy a bunch of comic books. After
They're
we're
on
done.
Comixology, or like if you like those Marvel, what the hell it's called, that Marvel comic app.
Yeah, Comixology.
The only problem with the actual the official Marvel Comics comic app is that like it's cheap to sign up for a membership and you can get a bunch of fucking comics.
Yeah.
But they're like 6 years behind.
Oh.
There's like nothing. The most recent thing in
Nothing
print.
super updated.
This is a couple years ago since I've stopped using it, right? So it's been
Yeah.
some time. But like
Yeah.
last time let's say for argument's sake, it was 2017 when I was reading.
Yeah.
Most recent updates were like 2015.
Yikes.
It's like Jesus. There's been 2 years of prints that I need to read.
Comics. Yeah.
But anyway.
So weird. Comixology. I bought a couple, I think, Spawn comics off Comixology a while back, and I had the app, but I had like an iPhone 5 at the time. It sucked to read because the screen was
it's so
too small.
tiny, yeah.
I think you genuinely need an iPad if you're gonna read comics.
Or even your laptop. There's probably a Comixology like browser you can go to.
Probably, yeah. I could just do that. So, yeah.
But yeah.
No, just fuck around and buy a bunch of comics.
Well, this was fun. There's a million of these fucking cards.
You have to sift through them sometimes. Like, there's some duds in here, but
We'll make it work. What's that one?
do you know any Dothraki? No, I don't.
Personally? No?
Well, you see,
Yeah.
they're not real.
I'm actually best friends with Jason Momoa. Jason Samosa.
And I'm best friends with Lisa Bonet. See you later, everybody.
And we'll see you guys next week.